Okay. And my name is Karen Lee, and I'm the Zoom coordinator for tonight. And I also need to introduce Rob Giles to do our invocation and pledge.
Thank you very much, Karen. Welcome, everybody, to another Toastmasters endeavor. I don't have a flag with me at the moment, so we will skip the pledge unless somebody has one that they can show in real time, not just a screenshot or a slide. With that, though, I would like to provide a couple of quotes in regard to the theme that's coming up soon for us for this particular meeting. And it revolves around athletics. First is a quote from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It says, "If something stands between you and your success, move it. Never be denied." Another one that's fairly simple, but from another famous athlete, LeBron James. His quote is, "Don't be afraid of failure. This is the way to succeed." Mia Hamm. "It is more difficult to stay on top than to get there." And something that is, last one that I want to give, and this one is, I don't know whether you know of this person. I believe that this is a hockey goalie, and her name is Manon Rhéaume. And I don't know if any of you have heard of her, and I'm pretty sure that it's a her. And she's a phenomenal goalie, or she was at least. Her quote is, "If you persevere long enough, if you do the right things long enough, the right things will happen." And I believe that this is what Toastmasters really epitomizes, is just getting out there, doing it, and eventually it's going to come to us and we're going to get better. We're going to improve. So with that being said, I would like to now introduce our first time Toastmaster for the evening. Please help me to welcome Innovative Planner Level 1, Justin Faust. Justin, take it away.
Thank you, Rob. The theme of the night is the influence of athletics. I believe athletics has influenced all of us. We all grew up playing sports. We all grew up in PE, doing different athletic maneuvers. And I believe we can take away certain stories or characteristics from certain circumstances in sports and apply it to our lives. Now, let me recognize our guest. We have none, so let's move on. First duty holder is timer, Tom.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. As timer, I'll be helping speakers practice expressing a thought within a specific time. During the meeting, I'll time the speeches, table topics, and speech evaluations. The green card, or in this case, the green background, indicates the minimum time goal has been achieved. The yellow card indicates that the target time goal has achieved, and the red card, or the red background that I'll go to, indicates the maximum time has been achieved, at which point, when you see the red, you'll have 30 seconds to finish up. For a 5 to 7 minute prepared speech, which is what I believe, is it Justin has? No. Let me check real quick here. John, thank you. You'll have, I'll flash the yellow card, the green card at 5 minutes, the yellow at 6, and the red card, the red background at 7 minutes, and you'll have 30 seconds to finish up. For the table topics, each speaker is encouraged to speak for a minimum of a minute and a maximum of 2. So I'll show the green at 1 minute, the yellow at 1.5 minutes and the red at 2 minutes. And at that point, you'll have 30 seconds to finish up. And then for the evaluators, you'll have 2 to 3 minutes. The green will be shown at 2, the yellow at 2.5, and the red card at 3 minutes, at which point you'll have 30 seconds to finish up. If you speak under time or over time by more than 30 seconds, you'll be disqualified and not eligible for rewards. However, for table topics, you must reach at least 1 minute. There's no grace period for that. I'll report on qualifying times when called on. Thanks very much. Back to you.
Thank you,
Just a
Tom.
quick note, Tom. We're not seeing you, we're only seeing the colors. That may be intentional, but if it isn't. just-
Thanks very much. That is in fact intentional due to the low processing power I have, which I have a choice between showing colors or me.
Okay, understood.
Thank you though.
Thank you, Tom. Our next duty holder is grammarian Rob Giles.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. As your grammarian for the evening, I have 2 duties. One is to pay attention throughout the meeting for good use of the English language and poor use of the English language. I will be listening for perhaps some interesting or unique phrases or words. I will keep track of all of this as we go along, and I will give a report regarding that at the end of the meeting when called upon by the general evaluator. My second part, or the second part of my role as grammarian, is to provide the word of the day. The word of the day is exonerate.
Exonerate.
Exonerate. And it is a verb. It means to clear from a charge of wrongdoing or from blame. An example is Rob was working so hard on his evaluation of John Vessels that he had to be exonerated from how poor his grammarian report was. Again, exonerate, and you will need to use this during table topics if you are called upon in order to qualify. I do encourage you to use exonerate throughout the meeting if you can incorporate it into your speaking. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob. Our next duty holder is vote counter Dagan Newland.
All right, yes, as vote counter, you'll be given the option to vote several times during this meeting. Since we only have one speaker and one evaluator tonight, we'll only be voting for the best table topics and the best of the big 3, which the big 3 will be the Toastmaster, Table Topic Master, and General Evaluator. Of course, when called upon to vote for these, you'll send me in a private chat of who you think the best person was. Also, feel free to give comments to anybody that's up here speaking. If you have any comments for them, you can send them a private chat to them for any kind of comments you want to give out. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dagan. Our counter will be Karen Lee.
Mr. Toastmaster, I will look for long pauses and ahs and ums, and I will make note and I will give my report when called upon. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. Our next duty holder is posture monitor Mark Schroeder.
Thank you. So tonight I will be the posture monitor, which means that I'm going to be looking for anything that I see on the screen that I consider visually distracting from your message. Given what we have in terms of view, for most of you, that's probably going to be something like playing with your beard, scratching your hair, adjusting glasses when you don't really need to, or something along that nature. Yep, there goes John doing it as a perfect example. And Dagan, add 2. Okay. And Justin. We have a lot of people who are fuzzy tonight. What I'll be looking for is when those things do not contribute to your message. So as for instance, if you were talking about beard wax, then maybe that does contribute to your message. But if it doesn't, I won't make a note of that. Also, if you happen to be doing anything with your hands or anything else, and if you're standing, if I happen to notice you're pacing, I will make note of those things for a report at the end of the meeting. Normally, I would be making noise except during the prepared portion of our speeches, but I will not be doing that tonight just because Zoom doesn't react quick enough to instantaneous sounds. So that's going to be my job tonight as the posture monitor. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mark Schroeder. So let me get into our theme a bit more, the influence of athletics. There's been plenty of debate going on. Who is the greatest NBA player of all time? Is it Michael Jordan? Is it LeBron James? Is it Kobe Bryant? But let's go back, way back, the 1960s. This debate was going on then. It was between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. Many thought Wilt Chamberlain was the best. He scored 100 points in a game. He averaged 50 points in the season. He led the league in scoring many times. But who dominated the era was Bill Russell. He won 11 championships. He also has 5 MVPs. Now, how did this happen? Wilt Chamberlain was much better at scoring than Bill Russell. Well, the main reason was Bill Russell knew how to play his role. He wasn't a great scorer, but he was very unselfish. He was also the best defender of all time. He led 5 of the top 25 NBA defenses of all time. He also led the greatest defensive team of all time in 1964, which held teams 10 points below their average. We can apply this to our own lives. We might not always be the most flashy or the most dominant, but what we can be is the most effective. And we can play our role for our team in our relationships, in our volunteer efforts, or at work. We may not always get the recognition, but we can be most effective. Now, let's go into our first speech. Let me introduce our first evaluator and only evaluator, Rob Giles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I will be evaluating John Vessels, and he is working out of the evaluation feedback project. He is going to be performing the first speech from that project. And the purpose of this project is for the member to present a speech on any topic, receive feedback, and apply the feedback to a second speech. The purpose of the speech is for the member to present a speech and receive feedback from the evaluator, yours truly. So we will be looking for what he does tonight, and hopefully he can incorporate any feedback that I have or any comments that you have into his next speech, the second speech of this project. His title is, drum roll please, photographic work, and his time is 5 to 7 minutes. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob. Now let's introduce our first speaker and only speaker, John Vessel, photographic, John Vessel.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Digital photography has changed a lot of our lives. It's handy, it's in everybody's phone, on everybody's tablet. A lot of people own digital cameras that they take on trips, but actually about 90% of photographs done today by the non-professional world is taken with their telephone. And that's fine and dandy and everything, but I'm here tonight to talk about film, the old analog method of taking photographs. The way that we used to take photographs in the past prior to about 2002, when digital cameras dropped below drop below $100, then most people back then, or a lot of people back then, were still taking pictures with film. Once the prices got down on digital cameras and everybody started buying digital cameras and started using that instead. Now, granted, digital photography is great and easy. Everything's kind of point and shoot. You basically just frame it and go, which is all, easy and happy. Photography by digital is got a wider latitude. It gives you more freedom because the computer makes all the decisions for you and balances everything out. So it works out really, really well. But I go back to my youth when I've been doing photography for too many years. We'll go there. 50 some odd years I've been doing photography by film. When I was like 10, my grandmother gave me a box camera. My mom bought me a pack of film, and I loaded my camera and I started taking pictures. Now, in those days, you took pictures, you rolled up the film when you were done out of your camera, which means you had to take all 10 or 20 or 36 exposures before you could do anything with it. Now, granted, that's not instantaneous like we all live on now, when we can take a picture and in 2.5 seconds it's out there on Instagram and out there all over the world. But sometimes I think that it's best just to slow down. And that's kind of what I go back to too. It's a nostalgia thing for me, and plus with everything that's been going on for the last 2 years, I got through watching all the Prime movies that I wanted to, and I got to have something else to do. And so I pulled out an old camera. This is a very old camera. This is a little tiny camera. It's a 110 camera, and actually this one's waterproof. And I had some film sitting up in the closet that's been there for 8 or 10 years, and I loaded it and started taking some pictures. Now, when you do film, you take that roll of film when it's completed. You used to take it to the drugstore or the photomat in the old days, and you could get your film done in an hour. It used to be, a couple of days, then it was a day, then it was an hour. And now you have to go back to the old days from my youth, when you have to mail the film off, have somebody develop it, and then they send it back to you. Now, luckily, they also, besides sending you prints and negatives, they send you a digital card if you want it. So I have a little flash drive that now has all my pictures on it from that roll of film. So what's the use of it? The good that gets out of photography by film? Well, again, for me, it's just something that I used to like. When I was like 13, my brother was taking a photography class. He was older than me. And we had a house out behind our house, and he turned that into a dark room. And so I'd been doing photography already. I went piggybacked on all his stuff, and I started developing my own film, read about it, learned how to do it, used the enlarger, started doing my own printing and everything. And that was really, really enjoyable to me. And so I kept doing it. When I got a few years older, I took photography class at high school. And we had a big old fancy darkroom there, and I could start doing color film and color prints, which was even better. So that made everything a lot easier. I'd spend hours in the darkroom just working away. Now, one of the things about film, it's not as easy. But my goal in film was to make the best picture I could, and to take the time and be creative and work through it. And it took a lot of trial and effort until you developed a system down to understand and be able to look at a negative being projected and turn it and say, well, I already know that's going to take an exposure of 10 seconds at f2, and then go develop it. Now, digital photography, you just take the picture, you go and you print it out if you want to send it to your printer and print it. And that's great. That's handy. I do it too. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And I'm not saying just because I do film, it's so much better. I've always had a dark room up until I've moved here into my condo. I used to have a dark room everywhere I went. Always was taking pictures, always developing my own film and then doing prints. And it was a creative thing for me. I enjoyed doing it. You would take a piece of paper, photographic paper, of course, expose it in the enlarger and then sit it and put it in the tray and just watch the image come to life. And usually it only took, a few seconds to a minute for it to develop, and then you move it on into the stop bath and the fixer, and then you can turn the lights on and really look at it. And that to me just gave more life to photography. It slows it down. It takes this creativity and makes it last a while. You go and you take a picture with a digital camera, you're done in 10 seconds and off you go and you're doing whatever you want. So to me, I did it because I wanted to get back into photography and start printing and everything, not printing, taking pictures again, to relearn it, to remaster all the things I've forgotten, which I know I've forgotten a lot starting this up again. But ideally, I'm enjoying it. I've always enjoyed doing it, and I just wish I had more pictures to develop. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, John. Let's call for a timer's report. Tom, what was the time?
I had 7 minutes and 33 seconds.
Shoot. Almost, so close, so close. Very close. There's no need for a vote because there's only one speaker and he also didn't qualify. Sorry about that, John. But let's get into the topic again, the influence of athletics. As you can see, my favorite football team is the Giants, the New York Giants. I know we're in Dallas, but you know. And I really think the Giants can teach us something. In 2007, the Giants went against the undefeated Patriots. The Patriots have scored an average of 32 points throughout the regular season. In the Super Bowl, the Patriots were favored by 12 whole points. Massive. The Giants were massive underdogs. Massive underdogs. On the last drive of the game, Eli Manning, the quarterback for the New York Giants, threw an impromptu pass to David Tyree. David Tyree was one of the worst receivers in the NFL. But he was in the right place at the right time. And he was prepared to catch that ball. He caught the ball on his helmet. And he held on to it for dear life. And in that game, the Giants would go on to win the Super Bowl. Due to much of David Tyree catching that ball. This can serve us. Being in the right place at the right time and being prepared to catch the ball is a metaphor for us. There's a right time and right place for all of us, but we must be prepared to catch the ball. Now, let's go into table topics. Table topic master, Dagan Newland.
All right, thank you, Justin. I don't know, as you may or may not know, I'm not really much of a sports fan, so I did not base my questions off of sports, but I did play off the word influence to come up with some of my questions. And of course, remember in table topics, you have 1 to 2 minutes to speak, and of course, you must hit that 1 minute. Then again, you have up to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So within 1 minute to 2 minutes 30 seconds, you gotta stay within that time frame to qualify, and you must use the word of the day, exonerate, which means free of blame, free of guilt. I believe the definition was. So you must use the word of the day also within table topics to qualify. So my first question is going to go. No, I'm actually going to say my question first. Like I said, Rod just put the definition there: to clear from a charge of wrongdoing or from blame. All right. So my first question is: who is a person who has influenced you and why? Karen Lee.
The question is, who is a person that has influenced me and why? The answer would have to be, I think my mother had quite a bit of influence on me. I know that she taught me values so that I would not have to be exonerated for any wrongdoing. And he also spent a lot of time teaching us about God. I think a lot of my personality has a lot to do with my mom. And she taught us to be grateful for what we had, and she also was grateful to other people who helped her, especially when she started aging and she was living with my brother and my brother-in-law and my sister and and they were taking care of her. She was always grateful for everything that they did for her. And I think, in conclusion, my mom had a great deal of influence on me. Back to you, Dagan.
All right, thank you, Karen. So yeah, I think one of my biggest people that influenced on me would be my dad. So kind of right along with you, you know, you're one of your parents. So that's really good. So I am going to change my background to gray, so which might tell the timer something. So Tom, so I'm gonna get you ready because I call you up first. Because the next question is going to go to you. So I will time you for this, Tom. So the question for you is, what do you think the qualities of a good influencer should be?
Thanks very much, Dagan. I think there are a lot of qualities that I look for in a good influencer. And the reason I say that is I've been influenced by lots and lots of people who I see doing things very well or influencing very well. And so I try and learn from them. I try and observe them. So one of the qualities that I've found the most impactful and that I've tried to emulate the most from an influencer is listen first. If you want to influence someone, you kind of have to, whether it's a person or a group, you really want to understand their point of view. You want to understand what they think and where they're coming from. There's an expression for it, which is meet them where they are. And so I think that's probably the single biggest thing is if you want to influence someone, it's it may be counterintuitive, but you have to stop and you have to listen first. There are a lot of other things that I've observed in influencers, good traits of influencing, but I think that one is by far the biggest. And so I'll leave it with that. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. All right. So my next question is going to be, and well said, by the way, Tom. So my next question is going to be, do you think influencers can be good role models? Do you think influencers can be good role models? And then this question is going to go to Justin.
Do I think influencers should be good role models? So, in my opinion, they are not obligated to be role models. No, they can be exonerated from being role models. That's not their duty. Their duty is to lead by example. And maybe leading by example is being a good role model. But everybody who leads by example may not have the best morals, or may not be the best, have the best family life, or may not be someone you look up to in other aspects of their life. And I feel like I've always been able to separate people from what they do. I can appreciate somebody for what they do, but I can also see them as a reprehensible person. So I can separate what they do as a whole from who they are. Many people can't do that. What's a good example? I'm not sure if you guys know or not. I mean, I have to say it. My favorite show growing up was The Cosby Show. It was a bit before my time, but I watched the reruns. It was fantastic. Great family life, comfort at home in New York. Great show. I really, really love that show. And I will continue to watch that show if it comes on. But I can appreciate Bill Cosby for what he created, but I will not exonerate him for his personal misendeavors. So I can separate the person from the task. And I do not believe just because someone is a influencer, they have to be a role model. Thank you, Topic Master.
All right. Thank you, Justin. All right. My next question is going to be, are you the type of person that takes the word of an influencer, or do you like to do a little research yourself on the subject they're talking about to influence you on? This question is going to go to John Vessels.
Thank you, Dagan. Can you repeat the question?
Are you the type of person that likes to take the word of influencer, or do you like to do a little research yourself on the subject matter that they're trying to influence you on?
I am the type of person that's going to do research on what they're trying to influence me on. I don't believe anything anybody says outright. I mean, that's not to say that I think people are liars, but anything I think is important, if they tell me something, I appreciate it and I understand it. And maybe that's, a person's belief, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the absolute fact. Because even I just think, no, I know this to be true. And then I found out, it's like, oh crap, I was wrong. Oh, I can't even exonerate myself because I make mistakes too. And one person's value is different from can be different from my values. And I think a lot of the influences out there, I guess I can't figure out why people are influenced by them. Somebody gets up there on, TikTok or something and does some kind of milk stunt. Now everybody in the world is like doing this milk can stunt, and they're getting hurt and they're just getting crazy. It's like there are things out there going on that people are trying to influence you about that I think are bad and they shouldn't be done. But, I'm not your judge, but for myself, I say, no, that's crazy. Don't do that. No, that's just absolutely the wrong thing to do. So I believe this influencer world that exists in cyberspace and everybody go, oh, they're an influencer. It's like, whatever. I just don't get it. I mean, it's not that they can't give some good stuff and they might, show me something I've never seen before. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to randomly go running out after them and saying, ooh, I want to be just like you. Back to you, Dagan.
All right, thank you, John. Yeah, I'm the kind of same way. I like to do a little research myself. I can kind of give you an example of this bearding community I'm in. There's a couple of big YouTube guys that have. There's like one that has like 45,000 subscribers right now, and he's considered an influencer because a lot of people buy the product that he recommends. But I don't care about that because I like to do my own research and see what works for me. So I just don't go by anybody's word by what they say. So one last question, and that is, have you ever influenced somebody to do something? If you have, tell us a little about the situation. And if you have not, do you think you could be able to influence somebody to do something? Mark Schroeder.
Have I ever influenced anybody to do anything? And I'm assuming that I have to make it legal. So we'll try to at least stay, or beyond the statute of limitations, one of the two. Trying to think of a good example of when I've had to do that. I think probably the biggest ones, for me, they involve new employees and bringing new employees in. Because when we get new employees, there's always a certain amount of training that they have to go through. There's a certain amount of setup of their environment. Being a computer programmer, there are things that you need in order to be effective. You can give them a PC and say, go do the work, but there are tricks of the trade and things that you've got and tools that you're using and how you're using them. In many cases, that's one of the ways that I have tried to influence people. I have been able to sit with people and show them how to use tools in a more effective way. And I find that to be very effective as a way of influence. And when you influence somebody on your team, it makes everybody else more effective because it spreads the work. It's one of the things that I actually miss about the fact that I'm pretty much working from home now, because there are very much fewer opportunities for being able to influence people, at least in person. I mean, these days, we're just not driving in. But it is also just amazing how much little things can influence you. I normally go to like mobile and Shell stations, but today I went to one of the Exxon stations, and the Exxon station was just so slow. I have never, ever seen a pump that slow. And I have to tell you, I left there and I was so, absolutely Exxon irate about that I just could not stand it. So it is amazing what can influence you and how easy it is for even small things to get on your case. But that would be my answer, working with new employees. Dagan.
All right, thank you, Mark. Yeah, he mentioned about pumping earlier. So I went to Sam's one time, and it literally took me seemed like 15 minutes to fill up my tank. That's how slow it's pumping. But anyway, so we will conclude the section of table topics. But before I get out of here, I'm going to ask for a timer's report. Did everybody qualify on time? I know you did. So, but did everybody else qualify on time?
Everyone else qualified on time.
All right. Now, Grammarian, did everybody use the word of the day?
I may have missed it because there were a few points where it cut out on me, and it was either from my side or from the speaker's side. But I found that Karen used it, Justin used it twice, John used it. Tom, I did not hear you use it. If you used it while I was cutting out or something like that.
I did not use it. My downfall.
Okay.
Yet again.
I will exonerate you this time. And Mark Schroeder, I'm going to allow it. It's not the word, but I know that he chose that particular filling station in order to incorporate his tirade about the service that was there. So I will allow it in that particular case. So everybody except for Tom.
All right, thank you, Rob. All right, so now let's take a moment to vote for the best table talk speaker. Remember to send those private votes to me, and that would be Karen, who talked about a person who's influenced her. Justin talked about influencers being role models. John talked about he does research himself on when influencers speak, and Mark talked about influencing others. So you can take a moment and send me those private votes in chat, and we'll move on to back to you, Justin, or
Yes.
all right, we'll go back to Justin now.
Thank you, Dagan. Now, let's go into our general evaluation. General evaluator, Mark Schroeder.
All right, let me make sure I'm still on mute. I am, good. Thank you so much. I will be the general evaluator tonight, which means I have several duties, among which are going through the evaluator's report for how our speaker did tonight, going through all of the duty holders' reports, and of course, finally doing an evaluation of how I thought we did as a whole this evening. We will just go ahead and start with our speech evaluator tonight, evaluating John's speech. There's going to be Rob Giles. If you're ready, Rob, please go ahead. Rob Giles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow members, and especially you, Mr. John Vessels. Your speech today was a little bit nostalgic for me, and I'm going to go into a few points that I thought you did well with, and a couple of things that you might want to think about. And I'll finally follow it up with what I really liked about your speech. So the good stuff. I thought that your introduction was great. You led it to a point where you talked about how now we're all using our cell phones to take photographs. And I think that was very relatable to everybody. So I think that did a good job with that. And your organization, where you started off with the history, you moved into your particular history and how you interacted with cameras and photography as you went along in life, and finally how you started to learn again how you had to perform and function as far as actually having film come to life and actually developing the film. So I thought that the organization in that regard was great. I thought the content was another thing that you did well with. And among the things that I just talked about, you reflected on the history, and you talked about taking photos and having to do so in basically, I don't want to say one setting, but it kind of sounds that way and it feels that way when you have a roll of film. You feel like you got to get all those in there so you can finally go get them developed. And I remember that. That was quite interesting. You talked about where we are now, as I mentioned, and how we are using cameras or our cell phones as cameras, and how there are some people out there that are still doing it the old-fashioned way, so to speak. But mostly, I really liked the feeling that you gave to me thinking back about using those, and in some ways frustrating, because you had to wait until you finished that roll of film before you can go get it developed. But also just the feeling of going back in history and thinking about all of those things that we've gone through and progressed through. So I thought that was very good. It gave me a feeling of how passionate you are for the topic. A couple of things that I thought that you might think about. You did show us one prop, but I remember a speech that was somewhat similar a few years back, that you actually had a bag full of props, different cameras, different things involving photography. And I thought it might have been better if you showed us some of those older cameras beyond that one that you showed us, if you have them. I'm pretty sure you have them. So that might have been nice to add to it. You also could have incorporated a little bit more gestures. I felt that you had gestures, but your gestures weren't up here on screen. They were down, and we saw just like little bits and pieces of them. When you talked about being larger and your hands were actually off the screen, fancy and in the tray, things along those lines. Finally, I thought that it was the passion, and it was obvious. You told us that you love photography, but at the same time, I could feel it. And I got that feeling, and it actually passed along to me as an audience member. So I think you did a great job. I thought your organization was good, your content, you brought us some passion. Perhaps add some more props. Stand back a little bit, maybe, to use a little bit more as far as gestures are concerned, having a little bit more impactful. And overall, great job. Love the speech. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Rob. All right, we only have one evaluator this evening, but I do still have to ask for a timer's report. Timer, how did our evaluator do on time?
Our evaluator came in at 3 minutes, 55 seconds, and the qualifying time range was 2 minutes to 3:30. So you were over by a little bit, by 10%.
Okay.
And Mr. General Evaluator, can you exonerate me from that? So that
I'm afraid there are too many witnesses tonight, and it's recorded, so we actually could go back and have somebody come after me. So I suspect not tonight. Sorry, Rob. Now, on the other hand, if we can make about 3 or 4 minutes of the recording disappear, you know, my PayPal is, I'm just kidding. All right. Let's see. At this point, the next thing to do, of course, we won't have a vote for the best speech evaluator just because we only had one and we had a disqualification. So we've had DQs all across the board tonight on both speakers and on our evaluators. Next thing for me to do is call on a duty holders report for some of our duties, which will be, I will do them in that order because it will put me last on that and then into GE for my report. We will start with grammarian. That does put you up again first, though, Rob. Please go ahead and tell us how we did from a grammar standpoint tonight.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Overall, I did not hear any poor use of the English language. Of course, I don't hear everything, but I did not hear it. I really listened, and I couldn't find anything. There were some things that I did notice, is that a lot of us had points where we would start a sentence and then kind of back up and start it again. That's something generally that the counter will report upon, but I may have stolen some of that from her report. So that's something for us to think about. Some phrases and words that I thought were interesting and unique. Mark Schroeder talked about beard wax at the beginning. Justin, I liked some of your phrases. Be the most effective. It's a very impactful statement. You also use the word impromptu pass. And I thought that was an interesting phrase to use for that particular pass. You mentioned being in the right place at the right time. And that's something that we can all relate to. John, you used the phrase fine and dandy when you were talking about cameras and using our cell phones and digital and all of that. But for you, it's the old school, but it was fine and dandy that struck me. You also brought back a phrase that I haven't heard in a long time, photomat. So I thought that was great. As far as our topic master and the topic contestants, I don't think I heard anything from you, Dagan. Influencer was a good word, and a few of our topic contestants had to use that word and did so as well. Maybe they didn't have to, but they did use it. Tom, you used the word emulate. You used the phrase meet them where they are, which is something for us to visualize and try to bring in both a physical sense and then in abstract sense. So I thought that was a great phrase. Justin, you said a reprehensible person, and I thought that was a good phrase. You also talked about misendeavors, which I don't think that that's a word, but you never know. Webster is stretching every day. John, you used a phrase, and I thought it was really just a bunch of BS. It was, oh crap. And of course, Mark and his Exxon irate. And that does it for me. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate that. By the way, misendeavor is apparently a legitimate word, just having looked it up. It was one of the ones that I caught too, and I thought it was an interesting one. Our next duty holder is going to be our counter. Our counter tonight is John Vessels. John, how did we do on verbal crutches?
It's Karen.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm just reading off the agenda incorrectly. Karen, how did we do on verbal crutches?
I will say that while we were thinking about what we wanted to say, we did have several pauses. And we were processing what we needed to say. Karen had a pause when she was beginning the meeting, and especially when she was working on her transfer from host to Rob. And also had a pause at the beginning of my table topics when I was deciding on who I was going to say was influencing me. We had several so's tonight. Now, Tom did have a couple of uhs in his table topic. Justin had a so in his table topic. When you were talking about Bill Cosby and his behavior and separating him from the person and the behavior, there were some pauses in there. And you had one when you were talking about Bill Cosby. Mark Schroeder, you had a couple of so's, and then you said so irate in your table topic. And Rob, you also had a couple of so's when you were doing your evaluation. And that's my report. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you so much, Karen. Posture monitor tonight was performed by myself, so I will go ahead and go through briefly what I saw. Again, on Zoom, we don't see a whole lot, but I can tell you at least what I did see. Justin, I noticed that you had good hand gestures, particularly during your early discussions as Toastmaster. Thought some of those were very effective, and they were high enough to be quite visible. John, also you use your hands, and particularly, I believe, just unless you got your camera reversed, it would have been your right hand as you were describing and talking about some of the influencers. I thought that the gestures that you used there were very good. Tom, overall, you have just a very animated personality, and that comes across on screen as well. Oh, sorry, I put these, since I'm also GE, I worked one from the top to the bottom and one from the bottom to the top. I missed one for you, John. John, the other thing that I noticed was, as you were talking about waiting for having to get the film back, it was hours and it was days, and you were rocking back and forth, indicating the time period going back and forth to get your film and your pictures back. I thought that was very, very effective. Okay, going back to Tom, very animated, and noticed also again a lot of hand gestures. You have a very animated personality in general. It comes across quite well on Zoom as well as in real life, for what that's worth. Let's see, Rob, things that I noticed from you. Noticed that you had one head scratch during yours. I also liked the old fashioned with the quotes. You used the quote marks. That was a good one. And Karen, also, we don't see a lot of you. We see you from about the chin up, and yet we still saw some of your hands tonight. So you got your hands high enough, describing what Justin was going through during your role evaluation just now, to get your hands high enough to where we could see, even though, again, we're not seeing below about right here, pretty close. So that concludes what I had for posture monitor. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go directly on to the GE's comments. We're going to do these mostly in the order of appearance, because that's the way I wrote them down. And if you had something later, I've re-added it to the earlier stuff. So let's start with Karen. A couple of things, Karen. Yeah, I noticed that, as a for instance, I'm certain that you've sat through it before, but you did not go to the website and did not show the agenda and did not go through how to find it. So keep that in mind as something to do. Make sure you call attention to the agenda and how to find it. The other minor thing, much more minor, is that when we went to Rob, I ended up stopping the share. Once we went to Rob, you could have stopped the share on your own. Doesn't matter. We backed each other up, but just remember that once you start the share, it's up there until you stop it normally. Justin, I like the background that you had. I thought the background was really appropriate for tonight, given your theme. And the one thing about a sports theme is that there are going to be some people who are lost if you get too detailed in it. But the thing that I liked about the way you were doing it was you were talking about the ability or how the lessons learned apply to our lives and the roles that we have outside of sports as well. And so that really brings it home and gives everybody here in the meeting something that they can take away from from what is otherwise potentially just sounds like a sports message. So I really like that. Rob, word of the day was very good. Exonerate. I'll get to that later, but I thought people did a very good job of using that. So very good on that. Interestingly enough, during the early portion of the meeting in your role, you were less animated than usual. You did not seem to get your hands up much. But once you got to being the evaluator, you brought your hands up just like normal. So I don't know whether that was an energy thing or whether that was something else going on, new environment there, getting comfortable in a new environment, something. John, I loved your speech. I love photography. If anything, was a little bit looking forward to more visuals than I got. I was really hoping and expecting to see more visual things, whether that was going to be photos or, yeah, we got to see a 110 camera. I haven't seen a 110 camera in, my God, in forever, especially not a yellow one, for God's sakes. But that was really the only prop that you used. And I was kind of looking forward to it and expecting and hoping more. With regard to film, I have yet to see a digital camera that has ever produced a print or image with the same wonderful skin tones as Fuji Color NPS film. That film was perfect for skin tones. I miss it so much. That's all I can say. And in fact, if you remember Plano photography, you actually used to have to make your own prints in order to compete. If you didn't make your own prints, you didn't get to compete. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, sorry. I heard we heard a noise. I wasn't sure what it was. But anyway, love the speech, love photography. Really enjoyed that. Dagan, thought they were good questions. I thought in general they were easy for everybody to have an answer to. They were not necessarily the easiest to have somebody use the word of the day improperly, but you did actually have very good questions. And what did I say here? Small and I wish I could read my writing. I really do. It will come to me later. But I thought, oh, you had a very small, that's what it was. You had a very small audience. I thought you did a good job of calling on people outside of the big three first and then going into the big three, which you kind of needed to do tonight just because we were so few on people. We did have one idiot use the word of the day as improperly as possible, but sometimes that happens. There's nothing we can do about that, short of kicking me out of the club. Rob, let's see. The thing I think from your evaluation that I liked the most or thought was most on target was talking about John's passion. I absolutely agree. You could tell the passion in his voice and in his presentation tonight. And I thought that was both stellar, and it was stellar that you pointed it out. That concludes my report tonight as general evaluator of what I saw for the meeting. We had a relatively small crew tonight. We got a lot of people out, but I thought we still did a good job of putting everything together and getting through it together. With that, I will ask, does our Toastmaster have anything else? Do you have any closing remarks, Justin, or do we just need to go to our business meeting?
No real closing remarks. We do need to vote on the big three though. So
oh, that's right. Thank you for pointing that out. I missed that. And yeah, I need to call for a vote of the big three. That's going to be a vote for one of Justin Faust as your Toastmaster, for Dagan Newland as Table Topics Master, or for myself, Mark Schroeder, as General Evaluator. If you would, please cast your votes, and those votes, of course, send them in private chat to Dagan Newland. And as always, if you have comments for any of our speakers tonight, make sure that you send those either to Dagan and let him forward them, or to the speaker directly. No other comment? Sorry, no other comments, Justin?
One more comment. The Giants do play tonight, guys. So let's cross our fingers. Giants versus the Washington football team. Go Big Blue. G-Men all the way.
Let's hope for a tie. Let's hope for a tie.
All right. If there are no other comments, we will then go to our presiding officer for the night. Our president is out tonight. Highest ranking officer is going to be VP of Education, Rob Giles. Rob, take it away to do our business meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mark. Another great meeting. And I only have a few things. Obviously, we don't have any guests. First thing that I would like to talk about is dues. And perhaps Dagan can chime in here. I don't know where we stand as far as members renewing. We do want to try to get as many as we can by the 21st, because I believe that that's where we can get the early bird ribbon for our banner. If we get 8 members renewed, I believe. And renewal is due by the end of the month or the 1st of October for the next 6 months. So Dagan, can you let us know where we stand kind of on that? At least an estimate?
We have 7 people who paid.
Right. One thing that we might consider is to, at some point, send out another set of invoices for those who have not.
They're automatically set to send out reminders every so often.
Okay. And that makes me think we have 7 people here. Is it all 7 of us? No, I'm just joking. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But just think about that if you have not paid your dues. It took me for a while to do mine. Dagan was probably, Rob hasn't done his yet. So, but eventually I got back to it and sent it in recently. So think about that. If you need him to send you another invoice, go ahead and ask him privately through an email. The next thing is kind of reiterate as far as our Area 33 contest winners. Karen obviously was 2nd place, and she would represent the 1st place winner in the humorous speech contest if they're not available. And Mark Sims was the winner for our Area 33 tabletop or Tall Tales speech contest. That contest that they will be competing in, and Karen, if it happens to be that way, which it's not likely, but you never know, is going to take place on October 21st. And if you look at your calendar, that is a Thursday. So I know that for myself, I will not be in our normal meeting, but it's something for us to consider. So start thinking about that. And as we start to approach, we'll have to decide whether we want to just have everybody attend the Metro Division contest in place of our normal meeting. And again, it'll be at least 5, I believe at least 5 tall tale speakers and 5 humorous speech speakers, I believe, unless one of the areas has to drop out as far as their contestant is concerned. So it should be decent as far as contestants and having some variety. And we already know that we're going to at least have one of our members involved. So it's always nice to be there to support that person as they move along. So that's the second thing that I wanted to talk about. I will, at this point, open it up to any of you if you have any business that you would like to discuss, old or new. Any takers? Okay. All right. I'm sure that I have forgotten something, but that's all that I can think of at this time. Keep working on your pathways. Keep looking at your next project is one thing that I would suggest and recommend, so that when your time comes to speak, you will be ready to go. And I know that most of you are good with maybe even finding out on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, whether you're going to be up for speaking. But we do have it posted each month on our website under the, full schedule or current schedule, I think is what we call it. So you can go there and look to see. Now, it's always not set in stone, but generally the speakers we try to rely on for those situations. Looks like Mark is going to show us there. And this is updated. It's view full schedule. This is view its current schedule, I believe, Mark. It'll be on the homepage. There we go. So you'll see it there, and it goes out to the 30th. Obviously, it changes as we go along. I don't adjust accordingly, so that's why we have the lineups that vary a little bit. But the speakers I try to have set for each of those weeks. So you can take a look there. Once we reach that last week, I will put together the schedule for the next month and then post it there as well. So you can always look there to say, oh, I'm scheduled to be Toastmaster, I'm scheduled to speak, and that way, or I'm going to be out. So you can always come back to me as VP of Education and say, Rob, I'm going to be out this week and this week and this week. Mark Sims is great about letting me know for the whole month or when he knows that's going to start to happen. So I encourage you to look at the schedule. And if you know that you're not going to be around, definitely try to let me know, and I can rework the lineup at least for that particular week as I send it out. Obviously, if you have to bail out at the last minute, then that's part of life. So best thing always, just like any other time, is let us know as soon as possible so that the Toastmaster can adjust. But that's it for that.
If you happen to have not got that because I went too fast, there are actually maybe two places that you can get it. Let's see.
Right there, yep.
There's one link right here, right below current agenda. There's current schedule. That's one way to get to it. And of course, we have the other link off of the members section, which is meeting schedule. So they both go to the same place.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, you're good. Perfect timing, and glad you brought that up. Makes it much more effective when you have a visual. So at this point, since we have no further business that we want to or need to discuss, I will ask for our vote counter to let us know who won as far as table topics and best of the big three. Mr. Dagan Newland.
All right. So we already know who won evaluator, so I guess I won't mention it. That'd be you, Rob. I'll mention it. I'll say it anyway. All right. So here's the big drum roll. So the person that wins both these table topics and best of the big three is going to be Justin.
Dual awards.
Dual
Mr.
awards.
Toastmaster. Good job.
I don't know if he heard.
What's that, John?
I don't know if Justin heard he was coming back.
No, I had to run to the restroom real quick. I heard you guys.
He's feeling a little bit like the 2007 Giants right now.
I know, right? Let's go, Big Blue!
Okay, so with that, I'm going to let Mr. Justin Faust move on and watch his Giants in all their glory. Anybody that wants to stay back and chat, we can do so as long as Mark Schroeder wants to carry the room. Actually, we could probably do it beyond that if we need to, but at this point, I call this meeting to adjournment.
All right, thank you all. I will stop the recording in 3, 2,